Welcome back to the Now What Podcast. I'm your host, Arian Foster, Bobby Fino, a.k.a. the Pod God. And we are back. And just a little news. I am going to get this Michael Jackson pod running, but it's taking a little longer with the research than I had originally thought. So in the meantime, y'all get to meet one of my friends, and we get to talk about some cool shit, man. So wait on that. But for now, we have my guy, Manish Shah.
That's right.
Manish Shah. You see, I read it, and the H's sometimes in different languages always fuck with me. So
Yeah.
right.
I've gotten every possible derivation of my name, so
Right.
you know what
It's
we're
all
about.
good. All right, man. So, man, welcome, man. I would love for you to explain why you're in Houston, and we can get kicking off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came out. This is my first time in Houston, by the way.
You like it?
I do. Yeah, had some good food so far.
All right.
I came out here for some meetings, mostly around introducing people to what we do at our company, Peerwell, and kind of telling them about this new program that we just launched around helping people that are suffering from chronic low back pain. And we took the last year developing this program to help people that are somewhat debilitated because they are struggling with low back pain, and hopefully helping them avoid going down the route of needing surgery and taking heavy pain meds to help themselves.
Right, which is wild because I've had back surgery, so I can definitely relate. We'll get into all that a little later, man. But I kind of want to dig into your family background. It's an interesting story how you guys got here, man. So if you oblige and let us in on that story.
Absolutely. I've actually never told this story or broadcasted.
You don't
in
have
any
to.
way.
If you don't
No.
want
I think it's been a lifelong dream of mine to actually tell this story
Oh.
in some meaningful way, because I think it's super fascinating and it represents where the country was and where we are no longer in terms of bringing or allowing people to immigrate to this country and build lives.
Right.
So, my parents, we're from India. My parents are from this middle of the Indian state around Mumbai called Gujarat, and they did what most people in India do at their time. They were an arranged marriage. I don't know how much you know about arranged marriage.
That's a different dynamic I've never really experienced because that's not the thing in America.
It's kind of an extreme when you think about it.
Right.
So my dad loves to tell this story.
Yeah.
He says why
I'm forced to be here now.
well, that's what my mom said. So, no. That's the crazy thing is that my dad says why are you messing around with dating and all this stuff? He's like, I met your mom for 5 minutes and then we got married.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That is I can't even fathom that.
It gets deeper than that. So on my mom's side, the way she tells me this story is they met for 5 minutes, which is true. But after that 5 minutes, she was like, I'm out.
Oh, she said no?
I don't want to do this.
It wasn't love at first sight.
When you think about my dad, he's got a lot of amazing qualities as a person, but education wasn't high on his list of priorities.
Oh, wow.
And so he has a very crazy life. We could talk about what he's been through to get to where he is today. It's actually crazy.
Right.
But yeah, after that first 5 minutes, my mom was like, I'm not going to marry this man.
That's wild.
But then,
Wait, do brides have the choice?
well, they have some say, but not a lot, right?
Okay.
And
What is the goal? Sorry, because this is kind of fascinating. I've actually never met people like that. So, not that they're weird or something, but it's just interesting. So, is it because back in the day? Because the reason why I'll never get married again is because the original reason for marriage was for land and power and to keep Is that kind of the same reason that they do it?
I think there's a sense of preservation of culture and tradition as well, especially in the that time with my parents in India. Even the places where they go to select who you could marry are not very far, right? So they're reaching from neighboring towns and villages and so on, so that you're likely to have a similar upbringing, similar cultural background, similar traditions, and those things can continue.
So is it Is it like the parents go? Is there like an institution that says we have the daughters, you have the sons? Like, how does this?
I don't actually know the full
Right.
like depth of how this works because I completely turned away from it.
Right,
but
right.
the essentially like the family determines, okay, you're now ready for that next stage of life, and so they start assembling your CV, your resume. They call it biodata,
Wow.
and that has like where you went to school, like who your family is, what kind of education your family is.
Is that like personality traits and shit like that?
And yeah, then they get into like even crazy shit like astrological signs and like
man.
it's like completely phony science. But
Yeah, of course.
they did this for thousands of years,
For
so
sure.
they turned it into some kind of science.
Yeah.
I don't think it's real, but anyway, yeah, they assemble this biodata that kind of like describes who you are, and then they start collecting the biodata from other potential matches, and then there's supposed to be some algorithm that says, okay, this is a good match.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That is wild. Though.
Yeah.
So like, let me dig into this a little bit more. So like, did they ever share with you the trials and the frustrations of it?
What do you mean? Did they share with me?
Yeah, like say like when we first met, like it was tough, but like year
You
3.
mean post-marriage?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so like, let me, before we get into like what actually happened, like, you got to understand who my dad is.
Right.
Because he had a crazy life. Mm-hmm. So he's one of 9 brothers and sisters.
Okay.
He's the 3rd oldest. He, like, was just, I think he had a different set of energy. Like, he wasn't really into school and all that. He actually ran away from the house when he was, I think, like 14 or 15. And he lived basically like, Slumdog Millionaire, where they were like living in the streets.
Damn.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that movie. So that was his life. He actually then he got into the wrestling circuit in India.
This how he fended for himself?
Well, there's like a competitive wrestling,
Okay.
like I don't know how you describe it. It's like competitive wrestling in India, but like not like WWF type
Right.
of stuff, right?
Like actual wrestling.
Actual wrestling.
All right.
And
Is
so
there a name it goes by?
they call it kusti. It's it's kind of very similar to Greco-Roman style wrestling.
Okay.
And he basically started competing as a wrestler from age 14 through like age, I think 20 something. Ran away from home, like lived on the streets. Basically, he would tell us a story like he wouldn't have a penny to buy salt for food, and he would use his T-shirt as a blanket when he slept outside. And he lived like that for a few years.
That's wild.
And then like started to compete. He trained with somebody, started to compete, started to do well, and they had these like levels of prizes that, like the first match that he won, the prize was a cup. And then and then it just like moved up. I think the 3rd largest prize was a bucket, and then you start collecting these like trophies.
Wrestling
like,
for a bucket. That's
yeah,
wild.
It's crazy. And then
Did he ever say why he ran away?
I think he like the family dynamic in his house growing up was just kind of not something he was happy with. I think what happens is the older brothers and their wives, because at that time the men, when they get married, the wives move in to that house,
right.
and then the wives end up taking over the house, like managing the house, right? And he just didn't get along with his oldest brother's wife, and they would just butt heads a lot. And he was like,
Is that normal in the culture that the family all stays with each other, like generations, really?
Yeah. Wow. But it's somewhat misogynistic because the women have to leave their house to move in with the man's family,
right?
And then they're expected to like do the household chores and like everything. Right. And this still happens. Like I went to my cousin's wedding last year, and they also they do the arrangement a little differently now, where they can meet over the course of like many months while they get to know each other, and then they have the marriage ceremony. But this, like, just to tell the story, like, my cousin married this woman. She's like 25, 26, and she lived in, I think, near this town in like a couple hundred miles away from where my cousin lived with my uncle. And as soon as they got married, she, like, that was the last time she saw her family. Like,
Really?
that they're like saying goodbye to her as
like,
part of
for
the
real, for
ritual.
real.
Like, you're moving to this family's house, and they hadn't really like hung out together.
Right.
They
You don't really
talked
know the-
online.
you don't really
like
know the person.
maybe WhatsApping back and forth.
That's
but then
crazy.
you go from that directly to, okay, now we're married. We're living in this house. I'm part of this other family, and you just got to figure out how to
Jeez.
live like that.
What is the divorce rate?
It's very low.
Yeah. Is it like culturally shunned? Like,
Yeah.
you can't.
Yeah. I think it's there's a strong sense of preservation of family
Right.
and culture and traditions,
Right.
and so I think it pushes people past like divorce.
Man, I wonder what the rate of happiness is then.
I think it's lower than you would think.
Because I always, like, sometimes, like, I think in America we have too much freedom, but like with shit like that, like, I feel like you should have the utmost freedom to pick who you want to live with.
Yeah. Well, the way they say it, the way they describe it is, you fall in love post marriage. Basically, you're learning how to love this other person.
I guess there's a good quality in that, like learning how to love people. But like some people, like, you just don't get along with. Like, I guarantee there's those situations where you're like, yo, I just don't like this dude.
Yeah.
Fucking does this and he
Yeah.
does that. Like, that would be.
I mean, everybody has those issues with their partners, right?
yeah, and you work through them because you
You-
already love them, though.
Right. Yeah, you're making some set of trade-offs about
Exactly.
like, okay, yeah, these are some things that I'm not so happy with, but on the whole, these are the things that I am happy with, and like, it's worth it.
So with
right?
your mother and father, did they express to you any kind of like the road bumps, the bumps in the road that they had to go
Oh
through?
yeah, I mean, they struggled a lot. Like, so to kind of pick up from where they met. So after that first 5 minutes, it was determined, okay, you guys are going to get married. My mom was like, no, and then she went to her oldest brother, who was like, that's kind of like how the hierarchy is. Like the eldest brother is kind of like the one that has the say. So she goes to him and says like, hey, I don't want to marry this man. Like, he's not educated. Like, I care about education and all this stuff, and I can be fine on my own. And he was like, if you're so great, then you should be able to make him great.
Oh.
And so he challenged her. He's like,
With the facts.
yeah. He's like, if you're that good, you can make him good. And then that's how they got married.
Man.
Yeah.
That's
and then,
wild.
yeah, and then they struggled. I mean, so they didn't have any money. My dad actually refused to take any money from my mom's family. He paid for the wedding himself. He and my uncle, they did a joint wedding because they wanted to save money. So they had like two couples getting married on the same day. And then he eventually found his other younger brother had moved to California and started to get into education and technology. And he
That's dope.
in the 70s, he saw like everything that was going to happen today.
Right.
And he was like, this is the place we all need to be. So he started to make moves to like bring people over. The first person he brought over was my dad to help, like, just to kind of educate him. And,
And where'd you say he was?
where was who?
You said your dad was coming to.
Yeah, so it was my uncle, my dad's younger brother.
Right.
He came to California,
California,
just
that's
to
what it
educate.
was.
Yeah,
Okay,
to get
gotcha,
educated. So he went to USC, he went to
Gotcha.
Berkeley.
Gotcha.
And he was like really steeped in the like where things were going. This was in the 70s. So this is like the very, very early
start,
days of
yeah.
Silicon Valley.
Floppy disks.
Yeah, exactly. Not even floppy disks, actually.
it,
Just
right.
like disk drives the size of this room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But he really saw where things were going, and he was like,
What was his education in?
I think he studied engineering, but
Wow.
not computer science.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And yeah, so he then sponsored my dad to come over. And then my dad the crazy thing was, like, this is what I was saying, like, this is no longer an option for people, but he got a visa to learn English in the U.S.
Wow.
He still can't speak English very well, but he jokes about this now. He's like, they let me into this country to learn English. And
that's dope.
like, yeah, like that's how welcoming we were back then.
Yeah, it's not like that anymore.
No, definitely not.
Nah.
Definitely not.
This might be an ignorant question, but forgive me if it is and it's offensive. But I've just never thought to ask it until you started. Because here in America, we call Native Americans Indians. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you guys think of that aspect? Because that's fucking weird. Like when you sit and think about it, like that's wild.
I mean, I don't think it's offensive. I'm curious, like, what should we think about it? I mean, I don't know. I don't care.
You know, I was gonna say I don't know because like they're not from India. Like it's kind of stupid that we call.
It's more offensive to them, I would say.
That's what it is, and so that's why like you say Native Americans, but like you grew up hearing the word, and then you also know that there's people from India called Indians, and like it's just a weird dynamic that I never thought to ask. If you guys don't think anything of it, then I shouldn't either.
No. I mean, I think it's more offensive to Native Americans.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah. I've never asked them what they thought about it.
We have become Americans, and they're like, they have to be called Native Americans.
That's so weird.
We should be like foreign Americans or something else, right?
That's so odd. Yeah. That whole dynamic is weird. America's.
Yeah, and then you get into the whole like, you know, the like dots not feathers type of stuff.
Oh
like
man, and then it gets real racist, right? So you study computer science, and I kind of want to get into that because I'm obsessed with science in general.
Okay.
And computer science was something I've never really dove into, but it's intriguing to me, and it's the world we live in now. So like, explain how you got into it and kind of what exactly is.
Yeah, I've been kind of a passionate user of kind of computer technology since I was, I guess, a child, really. Like I even started studying networks and networking theory and protocols and just network related computer science back in like when I was 12. So I just got really into it. I love how like technology can connect to each other, connect people to each other, but also connect to other machines, and like the whole history of how the information technology system has developed over the last like 70 years. I think that's super interesting. So I studied computer science at UC Berkeley. So it's one of the better known computer science programs in the country. A lot of the things that we know today were created at UC Berkeley under some of the professors that are still there. So I was super lucky to have gone through that program. Sorry, what your question was about computer science.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's a broad topic, so like what
that's what we're here for.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think through like what is how would we capture like computer science and like how it touches everything today. I mean, I think
because when I looked into like what computers were, they're basically, and it's hard for the layman to understand. Like I turn on my computer or my phone and it just works. I touch the screen and it just works. But like when you go down to the nitty gritty of it, like it's like code. It's like numbers and so that's the type of shit I have no idea about.
Yeah, so there's a good book. I'll send you the link to it that talks about how information science, that's kind of what modern day computer science started in, like came about, and it was just some very early engineers at AT&T Bell Labs that developed information theory, and that's what led to what we see today is like computer science and code and programming.
So information theory was basically, it was digital information?
So it's basically how do you encode data in ones and zeros, right? Because ones and zeros can be transmitted in lots of different ways, and it's very efficient in how it can be.
Now, why ones and zeros? I've always wondered that. What is the significance of a 1 and a 0? Like, why not 2s and 3s?
So I think it's because the capturing of a state, it's like on or off, and how that translates into the physics of encoding that state, right? So like this thing has a signal, and that when it signals on, it's a 1. When it's not on, it's a 0. And
so is it kind of just an arbitrary representation of on and off?
I mean, it like binary is like a on and off thing, but you're encoding a message in the transition between the ones and zeros, so between the on state, but then the off state, and then how that string of ones and zeros gets like reinterpreted or reassembled on the other side. It can be like a perfect passing of a message from one place to another, right? And you can store it, so you can have it persist.
Right.
Right. That's where the early hard disks came from. Like the in the magnets, you can store like a fixed state that says 1 or 0.
Right.
And then you could read that later on. So the message can hold, right?
So excuse my ignorance. Because I heard you, but I wasn't sure. I want to have it sink in. Is the 1 and the 0 necessary? Like, is it just a representation of the state of on and off? Like, is it like, could you code something and not have a 1 and a 0? Like, I just want to say that the significance of 1 and a 0.
So, I mean, that's kind of like a metaphysical question. Like, is it
Really?
Is it? Well, I mean, the question is, how do you take like a message or a piece of data and like communicate that in a way that's like lossless from one place to another, or from
What do you mean?
one point in
What do you mean
time
by
to
lossless?
another? So, like, how would I describe this? Like, there's always some kind of lossiness. Like when you're like, I guess when you're like just trying to say something to somebody else, right?
Okay.
How well they hear you.
Okay.
Like if there's a lot of noise in the background, you may not hear all the words that I'm saying, right? Or just like I'm speaking into this mic,
Right.
and it's going to be recorded. Like you want to make sure that every bit of my sound and what I'm saying is captured
Right.
and stored, so that whoever listens to it later gets the exact thing that I was saying, right? Not bits and pieces.
I've
of
never
it.
really thought about it. It's just kind of crazy
Yeah.
to begin with.
Yeah. I mean,
kind of
this
take
is-
that for granted.
Yeah, this is like the very like depths of how things work, right?
Right.
Like you want to make sure that what is being said or the information that needs to be captured can be captured in a lossless manner. So
okay.
like nothing, no piece of it is lost,
Got
right?
you.
And it can be like accurately like reassembled, right? So like this, my voice is being recorded on some storage device, and when it's like whoever's like whatever player is playing that sound back, it's like playing it back in the exact representation in which it was stored, right? So there's that's kind of where the information theory comes in. It's like how do you encode the voice, this data, like my voice is essentially data, in a format that can be lossless and can be reassembled and replayed exactly how it was recorded.
So would you know how to, from scrap, make something that could capture information and then reassemble it in its exact form, like you're saying?
Yeah, I mean that's what programming really is, right?
Right.
So there's layers on top of this, right? So you want to be able to like write something or write in a language that can capture data or capture some state, process it in some way. That's where the algorithms come in, right? Like what do you do with this information? How are you interpreting it? What is the objective of like this data? And then how do we like encode that algorithm in some way that if you just keep running it the same way, you're going to have the same output, right?
Wow.
And then like actually like running it, right? So like getting the algorithm to run through some system, right? There's some device or program that's going to execute this set of instructions that accurately does the same process on the same input. You get the same output.
That shit is fascinating to me. It's deep, and I understand what you're saying to a very small extent, but it leads me to a whole bunch of different questions, and my mind is kind of racing now.
Have you ever tried to write any code?
No. My little nephew, he's actually really into it, and he's written. I think he made a game. He went to some camp where he like coded a game, and so he made a game.
That's awesome.
And that's what he was basically explaining to me was like, I guess like there's coding is like different languages almost. Like, so you have like JavaScript and then there's, I forget all the different ones. So it's basically like you're speaking a language to, well, this was interesting to me about it. It's kind of like this inception concept is like you're coding and you're writing this language into a program that is coded with the language.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild to me.
Yeah.
So like, where does it start? Like, what's the foundation?
So this is where you need to learn about a very famous computer scientist named Turing. And
Turing. What's his name? I'm gonna write it down.
Turing, Alan Turing.
Okay.
And this is basically the work that he developed. So Alan Turing's like an amazing person. Like, he's done so much for humanity that nobody, like most people, won't recognize.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, he was the reason that we were able to win World War II, primarily because he broke the code that the Nazis were using in transmitting their messages.
Okay.
And he developed a machine that did that so that we could kind of snipe their messages and figure out what their game plan was before they knew it.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And then he developed this Turing machine. This is like a conceptual machine, but basically it's a machine that allows other machines to work. And that's kind of where all of this comes from. So we write code to tell other machines how to do things, right?
That's interesting. So are all the basic, or I guess by now it's probably evolved, right? So like, it's not like one basic foundation of code that tells other machines to work the machines. It's like,
well, most languages that you will write in today are interpreted in some way. So like JavaScript, or there's another language that's popular called Ruby, or there's like hundreds of languages.
There's hundreds of languages.
Oh yeah.
What is the significance of having a different language to code with?
So there's style preferences. There's environment optimization. So like JavaScript works really well on like web browsers, right? But C++ works really well on like machines, like real hardcore machines. And then Java is another thing that balances between the two, like runtime environments. So,
what's the similarity of the languages, and how does a language? Because I understand how language evolves with humans. How does a language evolve in coding?
So it goes back to like, what's the input, what's the output, and what are you doing to achieve the output, right? So different languages have different syntax and different grammars, I guess, how you would think about it in like speaking languages, right? Is
that an accurate depiction of how to think about it though? Like a JavaScript is like an English language, where it has like.
I think that's fair. I think it's a good enough metaphor to understand why multiple languages exist. Right. They do have some personality differences in how they operate, right. But they're better in different environments, right? So like JavaScript works really well on browsers, right? But Swift, which is like the iOS programming language, works really well on iPhones. And then Java works really well on Android devices, right?
So as far as like the evolution of them, is it kind of like a trial and error basis? Like they just kind of like I'm inventing a new technology and I kind of just find my own way to do it, and then bam, I have a new language to code with? Or
I don't know the history of all the languages,
right.
Often programmers get really like, territorial. They're like, this is my thing, like, and I want it to have its own language.
Okay.
And it's kind of like you're forcing people to do certain like things in a new way, right. Or think in a new way, because you're like, oh, I'm like this is the best way to do it, and it wouldn't work so well in these other languages. But then you create this havoc of getting all these people to learn this whole new thing when it probably could have been done in some other way. But I mean, that's kind of we're trying to make things easier for people to become developers and to take their thoughts and code them into some logic that can then be done and performed by anyone else.
Yeah.
Right? And so everything, like all the languages today, really do kind of break down to the same kind of assembly language machine code that actually gets run, but it's just way too difficult for any normal person to write assembly code, right?
Yeah.
It's like actually like moving data in between registers and then figuring out how to move that data from this place to this place to this place.
So do you look at the world? You probably look at the world differently than most humans. Like people, I always like. It's funny to me like when people like when their phone like isn't working or you have to troubleshoot it or something like that. And they're like, piece of shit. And I'm like, are you serious though? Like it always bothers me when people are like shit on technology. Like you don't have no idea what went into that. That's just insane.
I mean, it's frustrating when things don't work, right? I mean,
Not
it's frustrating
really.
for me too. Yeah,
I would never know how to make a device that when I touch it, things on it move, and there's like this, like Twitter, for example. That's a place that's not a place. I go there on my phone, but it's not a place. But ideas come from there. I've met people from there. So it's like, it's like this entire world, this digital world that doesn't really exist anywhere.
Right.
And there's no stopping it now. It's just out there. And so it's like this ideology of digital ideas. And if the app crashes, I would have never thought to make something. I don't even know where to begin on how to make something like it. So how can I be so pompous thinking, you piece of shit, you're not working? That always blows my mind with people. Like, you have no idea how to make an app.
Right. Well, I mean, it happens in other scenarios too, right? When things don't work, like when you're not able to achieve what you were setting out to achieve,
right?
And something is like just, it's not working, but it should. Like that's just, it's frustrating, right?
I can't relate, man. The only thing I relate to is shit that like I know I can do, right?
Okay.
Like so, if I'm on the golf course and I fuck a chip up and I shank it and it goes left, I get mad at myself because I know I've put in the work to know that I shouldn't be shanking my chips.
Okay.
But I have no idea how phones work. I have no idea how computers work. Cars, I don't know how to make a car. So it's like when things break down, it might be inconvenient, but I'm never like, you piece of shit. Like I'm never mad at the like I don't understand. Like people are.
So you don't get mad at Twitter for not working?
Never.
Never.
Like when Instagram crashed, like I don't know, it was like a week ago or something like that. And people were always it's funny because like I'm more of a Twitter guy than an Instagram guy. You notice like you're either one or the other. But like a lot of people from Instagram that I usually see when they're on it, they came to Twitter and to vent their frustration about Instagram crashing. I'm like, yo, shut up! You don't know how to do it. I don't. It always boggles my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like once something becomes so normal and then it stops working, you lose like the perspective of like what life was like before that thing existed. Right?
That's a hell of a privilege.
It's the definition of privilege, right? It's like this thing that you are now accustomed to, which is like a luxury compared to like majority of the world.
Yeah.
And it stops working. You're like, my life shouldn't be this hard.
How dare they?
How dare they make my life this hard?
How LeBron is working out. Fucking hilarious, man. People crack me up. So going back into the computer science, have you ever heard of I'm positive you have, but the simulation theory? Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts? And for people that don't know, simulation theory is basically that we're living in a simulation. What is your thoughts on that?
So I've had some long conversations with friends that think we're in a simulation.
Really?
And I mean it's pretty prevalent in the tech community that like everything is just like we're in one big simulation already.
Whew, it's a heavy thought though.
Yeah,
and it's hard. It's like God, you can't prove or disprove it. But I always think about like how fast. Like I grew up. I was born in 1986. How crazy has life progressed from then to now? Mm-hmm. From now until whenever 32 years from now, when I'm 64. In that same amount of time, it's going to progress even faster because of computers. Mm-hmm. So it's going to just continue to
that's right,
progress in a way that is unprecedented. And that's why it always kills me. I'm going to get off on a little tangent here, but it always kills me when we talk about economic systems, when we talk about political systems, we talk about all these things. People always used past examples and past civilizations as the bar or the metric to the standard to measure it by. And I always think that's bullshit because there's a huge variable in the internet and computers that has changed the way we live. And so you can't, I don't think you can like look at like, for an example, like socialism. Like when they always say socialism is this and socialism is that because of these past economies and these past regimes. But when you like, it's not that time anymore. Like computers, and it has changed everything. I don't want you to speak on. I'm gonna get into politics. But fuck, I forgot my point was. I had a point. That's what happens when I ramble. Computer simulation theory. So it is not something that you can prove. It's not something that is I don't think it's popular. It's not like a mainstream idea. But the more and more you look into it, and like I was talking about, the progression of how things are, and then when you get into quantum computing, like it just gets okay. So let's do that. I'm all over the place right now. But tell people what regular computing is, and then what quantum computing is, and why that is probably going to be the birth. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably going to be the birth of AI, like genuine AI. It could be.
It could be. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, you might know more about quantum computing than I do at this point.
I highly
I don't
doubt that.
follow it.
I
as
highly
much.
doubt that.
Like, what do you understand it to be?
So basically, I have to understand computing first, right? So
Okay.
So computing is basically like input and output, and you're sending information to a destination at a certain rate. But there's a finite way you can do that. From my understanding, quantum computing, like when you talk about quantum mechanics and things, I could be totally talking about my so tell me if I'm wrong. But quantum mechanics is basically like you're dealing with like probability. So like we don't really ever know where an electron is. It's kind of like we just understand the probability is probably in that place. So from my understanding, quantum computing is something that allows the information to go at a much more vast and rapid rate, and it's the probability factors into it where it can go. I don't want to say infinite. I don't think that's accurate, but so much more faster and so much more pace, and so everything speeds up. Every single thing speeds up. I mean, am I close? Am I even?
Yeah, I think that's right.
If AI is a possibility, I think that's probably going to be the end of us.
Oh, so you think AI or some eventual AI will like turn against
No
humans?
question. It's not even. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, why would? Yeah. You think it would?
All right, I think there's a possibility. Yeah.
I think when you analyze the human race, the best depiction of it was actually The Matrix. Is when The Matrix was talking to Morpheus, and he said the human race is a virus. It's exactly what we are. We're a virus. We destroy every environment that we're in, and we need a host, and the Earth is the host, and we're slowly destroying it. Every place we go, whether it's land, sea. Wherever we go, we destroy the environment. Like you're ruining your host. That's what viruses do.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, but we also create things, right?
Yeah, we create things to destroy it better, in a better way.
No, I mean, like you're an artist. You create things that are like positive to other people and how they think.
What would a machine care about a painting?
I think that's what the difference between humans and machines, though.
Yeah, but
right?
when they're superior, though, I would think that they're superior, because I think once you, and Sam Harris is kind of hit me to this, is like once, okay, say there is the first version of AI and it has the ability to learn. Machines don't sleep, and if it's learning at such a fast rate and a fast pace, it's going to continue. Like the evolution of its learning capability is going to continue to grow. So the rate at which it's going to learn is just going to continue to grow. So it's going to get smart as shit way faster than we can probably even conceive.
Absolutely.
And so if that's the case, I don't think you analyze the human race as a positive. One, two, I don't see if and it really, I guess it kind of depends on what you program it for. And if it's sentient, see, it's a deep topic.
That's the question. Like, will these AIs become sentient,
Right.
and start thinking for themselves,
Right.
versus just like what we task them to think about,
Right.
right, and to learn? Because you're right. Like in a lot of situations, more than we can enumerate today, like a machine will eventually be able to do that thing
Right.
far better than the human can do it or the average human can do it,
Right.
right? I think there's always going to be the place for somebody that's like just thinking in a different way about that thing, and that's where kind of creativity matters, right? So
Yeah.
like most of the knowledge-based jobs today were like I think they're going to be replaced with
Yeah.
AI, and they're starting to already. So like we're just going to see a lot of job displacement. But the hope is, and I'm an idealist or optimist. So
Yeah,
the hope is
I'm
that
a pessimist.
yeah,
Super.
yeah. Well, you have to be one. I had to be an optimist as an entrepreneur. You just there's
Perfect.
no way.
I
There's no
agree.
way to live. But I think that it emphasizes the creative muscle, or it creates an emphasis for the creative muscle, because that's one thing that we haven't, or I don't think computers are, or machines are.
Right.
They're not capable of that, in my opinion.
I don't think they're capable because I don't think we really understand it. I think that's what it is.
We don't understand how a machine could be creative.
No, we don't understand our creativity.
Exactly.
Like, we don't understand. I think consciousness is probably the biggest looming question in science, other than dark matter. But it's a huge. We have no idea what the fuck we're doing here, but we have no idea why we're aware. I think it's an answerable question, but I don't see how creativity would be appealing to a logical entity that's purely rooted in logic. To me, it doesn't make any sense, because art kind of defies logic in a way. Like it doesn't, like you kind of bask in the imperfection, and I think logic is kind of geared more towards perfection, which is interesting in itself.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy for me to be like championing creativity, because I'm like a
Computer science.
computer scientist. Like my partner, she always like makes fun of me because like I don't read fiction. I'm very like scientific in like how I think about
Logical,
things,
right.
and just it puts me in like I need to be in like very specific routines, otherwise I just get in a bad mood.
Right.
So it is interesting. to
Banging
think-
for humanity right now.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it is interesting. Like, I mean, there's already getting to the point where computers are writing their own code, and like,
It's starting.
yeah, exactly. So, there's a lot of these like instances of things that we value. The value function is going to completely change, because computers or AI are going to be able to do those things far better than we can do them.
Right.
And then the question is like, what do you do? Like, how do you survive?
That's the thing, is if every living, breathing thing's goal on the earth is to survive. And so if computers become sentient, why wouldn't that be their goal too?
Yeah.
And our survival directly affects other living organisms. We fucking murder animals.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't give a shit. Step on ants, kill spiders. We don't care. Why wouldn't a sentient, almost omnipotent entity look at us like, what are you guys doing here? Like, you guys gonna serve us? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it's a good question. I mean that's there's a very strong contingent in Silicon Valley that thinks that eventually AI will become harmful against humans
Yeah.
unless we
Oh,
control
that's
it,
just so
unless we
scary.
try to protect ourselves from it. So like it's like nuclear like bombs,
Right.
We created them, and they can create enormous destruction. And now like that box is open, you can't go back.
Yeah.
So like there's I don't know if you follow OpenAI. There's
Is it on Twitter or the gram?
OpenAI is a nonprofit organization.
Oh, it's just a thing. See, my little social media ass.
It's actually very interesting, the work that they're doing. So they are kind of tasked with how can we push the frontiers of AI and what it can do, but also how do we understand the places where things can go wrong, and the consequences of letting AI like just grow or proliferate without any sense of like control or I mean, less control, but
So do you think there should be regulations on the
I think there eventually will be. I think there eventually will be. Like,
That's heavy.
yeah, I mean, any like regulations will essentially be wrong for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think just like there's regulations against like plutonium and nuclear materials, there's going to be similar regulations against AI.
But I think I'm thinking about the people who would buck against that system. Do you think that they would say there has to be some kind of historical resume of AI being harmful or digital or computers being harmful? Like, and we don't have that. We don't have that yet. We don't have any evidence of it being harmful in the future. So how could you regulate something?
I think there is evidence already. I mean, if you think about it, the AI is only as good as the data it's given, and a lot of that data is biased in a lot of ways, right? Even if you go back into healthcare, right? All the clinical studies that we hold up as like the best of medical science, most of those studies were done on men and not women and not people of color and not like all these other like segments of humanity that we don't know, right? And so like all the guidelines, everything is like biased in some way, right? And so I think the same thing is happening in AI where the data that is being fed to train these machines is biased, and they're creating like selection bias and adverse outcomes as a result. And so it's already kind of populating, right? You think about, AI for sentencing guidelines and how that's going to just really like fuck a lot of people because, and the other hard part is that, and there's another big movement in AI around explainability because of this, right? Like you can feed the AI all this different data points and it'll come to some conclusion, but you don't know how it reached that conclusion. You don't know what intuition was developed by the machine.
Wouldn't it be the algorithm in the program?
Say that again?
Would it just be the algorithm in the program that?
No. So this is where like AI is different than regular programming. You're just feeding it a massive set of data, and then letting it figure out correlations and patterns and connections.
You're not privy to the
no. Yeah. So that's why there's a push now for explainability to figure out what did the AI use to reach this outcome or conclusion.
Wow. I see that. That's an aspect I never even thought of before.
Yeah. That's kind of the nature of these like very complex neural networks where it's creating many layers of connections from an input to an output, but you don't know where or how it's making its decision at the end.
Jesus. What is the similarity between the human brain and a computer, or is there any?
A human brain and a computer?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very difficult question to answer, right? Like, you mean between a program and a computer? Like,
yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
So, I would say that there's little similarity between those two because in like everyday like programs, you're just running like the same like input to output, right? And you're doing the same manipulations against like that input to get to the output. And you just like a good program will always do the same thing. Given the same input, it'll get the same output.
But what we do?
What's that?
That's what we do.
Not always.
It's rare.
Not always. Like, you have the ability to change your mind. Like we were just talking about before.
A lot of people don't, though.
Well, that's the capability of the human brain allows for that, right? So whether they choose to do that or not that's a different question.
That's an interesting segue. Do you believe in free will?
Yeah.
You believe in free will? Mm-hmm. I don't think I do.
Okay. Why?
I think you're a product of your environment, right? You're a product of your environment, and you're in no control over what your environment is. And so, like everything that you are is a product of like what you've seen and what you've experienced. And since you're not, and you had no control over your environment, every choice you make in the future is predicated off everything you've seen in the past. So you're not really in control. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could see how you get to that conclusion. Yeah.
Right. And furthermore, I forget the study. There was a study that said that people had to like choose like I think hit a button. I forget the study. But they proved that your brain actually makes the choice for you before you're conscious of what choice you made. So that's even more telling. It's like by milliseconds. It's like very small. And that shit is wild to me.
Yeah, you're primed
Yeah.
to make
so
this
so
choice.
the implications of that to me are huge. And granted, there's probably more studies that need to be conducted, but it's telling in my opinion. And that what if we're not pulling the strings? Like we think we are, but what if we're not?
Well, maybe we're in a simulation. And it's
Facts.
like,
But this
right?
is why that kind of
Yeah.
comes to a head and,
Yeah.
and why these hypotheses are even viable. Like why people even entertain them because of shit like that. So I don't think we have free will, which is interesting, and those consequences are interesting in itself.
I think so. I don't think we're in a simulation. Just to put that on.
Oh yeah,
record.
you never really
No.
answered.
I think there's a lot of people that believe we do.
Right.
And it goes back into like, do we have free will or not?
Right.
I believe we have like, the free will. I do think that our choices get primed or biased based on things, and sometimes that bias is too strong. You can't overcome it, right? But I think it's a probability at the end of the day, right? There's some probability that you could do that 0.0001% option versus like the 99% option, right? And sometimes that happens, and I think that's when life gets interesting.
Yeah, and like so, like a thought experiment that Sam Harris. Do you know Sam Harris?
I was just listening to him on the way here.
Okay. So a thought experiment he has is like where he goes. Tell me if you know this thought experiment.
No.
Okay. So he says, like, pick a city, any city in the world.
Okay, San Francisco.
San Francisco. He said, like, you could have picked any city in the world, but for some reason, you picked San Francisco. Like, you probably didn't think about Paris. You probably didn't think about Tokyo. You probably didn't think about some small city in Africa. Like, you didn't think of these things. And the fact that you didn't, I don't want to fuck his point up, but he basically says all your experiences gathered up to make you think of those specific city that you thought of. Like, and so like you're not necessarily in control of what your brain picks.
I mean, yeah, I can understand that thought experiment.
You could have picked any city in the world, but like, that's what came up, and like, he's not convinced, and I'm not necessarily convinced that you had any control over what city that you.
So you're saying I really didn't have. There's no real choice in the matter.
I don't think there is, because your experiences in your past have led you to think of that city first, and now you're probably thinking of some small cities that
sure. You just like fuck with the experiment.
Yeah, but that's because you're conditioned to probably you want to prove me wrong for whatever reasons in your past, right?
Yeah.
And so like those kind of instances are subtle, and like it's not 100% proof, but it's just like it's interesting to think about like why did I think of that city? I have no idea. There's no reason.
Actually, I think there is a process that's happening that led me to choose that and to say it out loud. Like, if you think about context that we're in, right? Like, I'm sitting across from you. I'm being recorded. This is being recorded. Like, I don't want to have like a lot of dead time, so I'm going to choose the thing that comes to me first, because like recall is going to obviously go to the things that I know the best first, and that leads me to San Francisco's a fair. It's a city, so it answers the question.
I think your experience, being a logical thinking human being, computer scientist, you calculated all that in your head. Like some people will be like, I don't give a shit if there's dead time. I'm gonna think of a nice city. I'm gonna think of it, right?
Some people.
But your experiences that you were not in control of led you to that conclusion.
The thing that I think it really comes down to is like the defense mechanism, right? Like, I don't want to feel awkward or embarrassed or anything. So I want to get something out because the longer I wait, the more awkward it gets, right? That awkward silence is uncomfortable.
I love awkward
right?
silence.
I can't do it.
Really? That's so funny. It's so funny to me.
Yeah.
Not to get-
I mean, I don't like it when it's awkward for me. Like, if it's awkward for other people, that's a different
But
thing.
it's so funny because it's like I don't never get awkward, and I think maybe it's sick, but I kind of enjoy seeing people be awkward in awkward silence.
Yeah, that's a bit twisted. You enjoy somebody else's pain.
See, I don't think it is pain. That's what I say. So I think the reason is because, and my mother she gets so mad at me because I don't take anything in life seriously. Like, there's nothing like and
Is it true?
That's nothing. There's nothing like.
Not your kids.
I mean, of course. When I say take it seriously, like I don't. There's nothing that won't be funny to me.
Okay.
Like even if they fuck up, if they do something they're not supposed to do, it's funny to me. Like,
Okay.
Of course, I'll try to correct their
Sure.
pattern just because I'm responsible for making sure they're okay humans. But like somebody could die, and like I don't laugh at the death. Like don't get me wrong, but it's just like it's life. Like there's nothing. I think I finally realized like nothing's in my control, and so like worrying about it, and it just there's no point to it. And so like things happen that like somebody will tell me some bad news, and I'll be like, man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And they're like, why are you laughing? I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's just I can't.
Yeah, my partner Lenore, she's very much like that. She's been through a lot of things in her life, and
Right.
she's now at the point where it's like,
What can you
like,
do?
what can you do,
What can you
right?
do? So like when people get awkward, it's funny as hell because
Yeah.
like there's nothing about the situation
Yeah.
that's actually awkward.
it
It's just,
pisses me off sometimes because I'm like, how the fuck are you laughing at this right now? Like, how are you cracking a joke?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like,
That's awesome.
I'm in
So
a
you-
mood right now.
yeah,
I just don't
you-
want to laugh about this
your lady's
right now.
just like me.
Yeah.
And so like my girl get mad at me too.
Yeah.
Because like she's always trying to be serious, and like I'm always staring at her like, yo, it's not.
I know.
It's not serious.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I like over the last couple of years I've been trying to practice more of is don't let the things that are not in my control affect my thoughts and feelings.
There's nothing in your control. I hate to be the
No,
bearer of bad. There's
well-
nothing in your control.
The things that I do, I think are in my control,
Like
right?
what?
Like how I spend my time, what I choose to work
It's not
on.
in your control.
Okay, I mean this is where we'll disagree.
Say somebody in your family is sick and you got to go be by their side.
Yeah.
It's not in your control.
What do you mean it's not in my control? Not in my control to be there?
No.
Like I have to be there or I don't have to be there?
Well, you don't have to be there, but you'd be a dick if you were not, right? So
Well-
like you have to be there.
Well, this happened last night. So I'll tell you, my dad for the last week he's been coughing. He's had like some health issues, and he's 79 now. So it's like anytime he's getting sick, it's it's serious. It could be serious, and like he got so bad that my mom took him to the hospital, and they're like, oh, we're gonna admit him through the ER. And I was here in Houston.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I was like, is it that bad where like I need to like fly back?
Right.
So when I was texting you, I was like, I'm debating about whether or not I
right.
should just like jump on a flight and go home.
Right.
And then like we started to get more like updates on like what was happening. And so the first update I got, I talked to my mom and she was like, oh yeah, he's like, they're admitting him, but he's breathing normally now. It's just like some fluid built up in his lungs. They think it's pneumonia, but they're going to run some tests. If it's pneumonia, it's like totally normal for his age and everything. And then like, I was like, cool. Okay. So it's not serious. I'm just going to like keep doing what I'm doing out here. And when I go home, I'll go visit and everything will be cool.
Right.
And then like I talked to my brother, and my brother is like freaking out because he gets very excited about lots of things. But he gets like hyphy pretty quickly. So
I see. The debate language.
born and raised. So he called. He called. He's like, "Hey, you need to like come home. Like they think it's heart failure. They think it's all these things, and like I don't trust these doctors. Like all this stuff." And he's like in my mind saying like, "This is okay. This is actually not so serious, or this is more serious than I thought."
Right.
And so I was like, "Shit! Now I gotta like go. Like okay, now I do need to go back."
Right.
And then like I talked to my cousin. She's a doctor, and she was like I was like, okay, my brother's not a doctor, so let me get somebody who has a real, like, educated opinion about what's going on.
Right.
So we talked to her, and she's like,
Never Google your symptoms.
True. Yeah. Google can be bad.
Man, I've had everything.
Yeah. So anyway, I talked to her and she's like, oh, yeah, it's actually normal and then this and that. And so it turned out like, yeah, like the test, the next set of test results came back and they said, okay, it is most likely pneumonia. And so like now I'm like back. Okay, I don't need to like rush over.
Right.
And she told me that. She was like, yeah, like it's probably normal. Like, don't worry. Like, he's gonna be fine. And so like, but that was the choice, and like my choice was being like switched from one to the other.
So did you have the choice?
Yeah.
How though? So if your choice was being switched depending, and it was contingent on how serious the condition was, it wasn't necessarily your choice.
It wasn't my choice. It was my choice to stay. I could have just gone.
It was your choice to stay, but your choice was contingent on how serious the condition was.
That's the thing, right? Like, you should make informed choices.
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
You're not in control. Like, so you're in control of if I want to pick up this phone or not. Kind of, right? I can make an argument that you're really not, but but as far as outside environmental influences, you're not in control of those. And how you react is directly affected to your outside influences, and you can't control the outside influences.
True.
So if you're walking down the hall and you see somebody snap their leg in half, like, you don't have a choice but to look and be a little concerned, or whatever your reaction is. Like, your reaction is out of your control. Like, you don't have any control of your reaction.
True. It's like an impulse or an instinct.
And so, like, with the example that you gave, you don't really have a choice. Like, it's directly contingent on the condition. You have a choice, and this is why, like, it's a good debate, because I think we have the illusion of free will. Even Einstein said it. Einstein said we have the illusion of free will. It's an interesting topic, man.
Okay,
but I want to dig into.
We can go wherever you want to go.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I've looked into it pretty heavily, man. And like, when you look at, I don't want to get into that because that's just and I haven't put any kind of real research behind it. Okay, but no, I don't think we got free will. You do. We'll leave it at that. But I do want to get into Purewell, man. What Purewell is and what kind of work you guys are doing. You kind of alluded to it at the beginning of the podcast, but I want to.
So, after having like gone through 15 years of building companies in technology in Silicon Valley, like, this is the thing that it feels like this is the thing I was led up to do as a company to build. So I'm like really passionate about it. I think it's the work that we're doing and the patients that we're supporting. It just makes everything better, right? So essentially, what Purewell is, how we describe Purewell is a complete end-to-end condition management system for patients, and we focus on a very specific kind of disease. We known as musculoskeletal disease. I don't know if you've ever heard that term.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, you have. So, well, you've been through many surgeries
14
in your life,
surgeries.
so you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, for everyone else, musculoskeletal is often not talked about enough. Yeah, we hear a lot about diabetes, cancer, things like that, but musculoskeletal costs us as a country 2 times more than cancer.
Really?
Yeah, it's about $190 billion in spending. The way to think about it is anything that
for treatment or for
treatment.
Wow.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, it's up there.
That's wild. Explain what it is.
So it's basically the musculoskeletal conditions or diseases is, in my opinion, it's anything that impedes the person's ability to move freely without pain. And so you think about when you injure your leg playing sports, that's a musculoskeletal issue, right? Or arthritis that happens as you get older, and that leads to things like joint replacements or hip replacements.
Yeah, I got all that shit.
Right? You played football, you're more likely to have a hip replacement in your early 50s.
Thank you.
Yeah. We got you covered whenever you're ready. So you got a couple more years. You're fine.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So basically, what Purewell does is we help patients that are going through those issues, and we deliver to them a kind of comprehensive treatment program to guide them from end to end. So what that means is when you're affected by one of these issues, like like back pain, for example. You want to start doing things to help improve that so you can get rid of that pain and start living your normal life again. And so with our medical advisors, we developed this kind of treatment program that takes care of or kind of guides people through what we describe as 5 main pillars of total health. So that's physical therapy, nutrition, pain and anxiety, so everything above the head or in the head, health literacy, which is a big deal, and environment. So how do you help improve your environment to become a safe and effective place for your recovery? And so we kind of downloaded from some of the top experts in healthcare to kind of assemble this data-driven protocol that covers these 5 areas. And then what we do is we guide people through a set of exercises and activities that kind of improves or optimizes their condition around these particular milestones in their treatment. So that, like the first set of programs that we developed were around optimizing people before and after surgery. And so if you're going in for a surgery, there's a lot of things that you can do to make sure that that surgery goes well. And it's not done for you. Like nobody, like the healthcare system today totally neglects most of this, right? So you probably, if you've ever had surgery, there's a lot of things like that happen or that could go wrong and that are in your control. Well, may or may not be in your control.
Are they?
But no, like for serious, like the surgeons that you're gonna have that are gonna do your surgery, they're not paying attention to like the quality of your nutrition going into the operating room. They're not paying attention to the anxiety or depression that you might be feeling because you're having surgery. And they're not trained to deal with those things, right?
They don't really care.
And they shouldn't be, right? And it's not that they don't care. It's like they have trained for years in becoming expert, like cutters, right? How to cut and how to like operate on the anatomy of the body and do those things. They're not trained in psychotherapy or nutrition or like home assessment, right? That's not their job, right? And yet those are the things that contribute positively or negatively to somebody's overall outcome, right? Like if you're a diabetic and you're having surgery and your diabetes is out of control, you have a high risk of infection, of heart failure, of other things that happen in the operating room. And like that's on you. Like you got to do something about that. And so we realized that around these like major events in people's musculoskeletal treatment, there's a lot of opportunity to help guide this person through a set of things that are going to help them ensure that that goes well. And then we help them also on the other side of it. So how to properly recover from a joint replacement, for example. And then the whole system runs just learning from the data that people contribute as they go through the program.
What kind of data have you collected?
So we had to develop some technologies that allowed us to understand the functional movement of the person. So when we're talking about musculoskeletal care or musculoskeletal as a disease, it really is about how the body moves and is it moving in the right way. So often it's not easy to understand how well a person is moving. So we had to develop things like using everyday technology, like your smartphone, for example, to capture or help the person measure their own knee range of motion. So that's a big deal, right? If you're having like an ACL repair, you want to know that your range of motion is back to normal, like after from before your injury, right? But it's hard to get that understanding because you only have X amount of physical therapy sessions that your insurance company will pay for. And so how do you get like a regular update on how you're doing, right? This is actually just a big takeaway in healthcare. Like people are often left in the dark about how they are, like how their health is, right? You don't really know. Like
People are scared to go to the doctor.
Yeah, and even often like it's hard to get the data from the doctor that is your own data or that tells you about your own health, right? It's like very difficult to extract that information. And so
I know there's a lot of distrust with the general public and doctors and physicians. Have you noticed that? Your brother called you and said, "I don't trust these doctors."
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
like I understand where it comes from from my community, like so the black community. I get it. Like there's been documented like things where there has been like government testing on us, like right, and where they're pretending to give some kind of treatment, and it's actually something else. That's documented. So like I think that folklore has kind of grown over time, and so like a lot of black folk like I don't trust them folk,
Right.
and so but a lot of the general public is like that too, because like with big pharma and things like that. So is there anything to kind of combat or ease that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, I think we can take examples and like vilify an entire segment of people, and I think that's wrong,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because there's going to be good. As an idealist or optimist, I think there's more good than there is bad.
I agree.
But there's always going to be some bad.
I agree.
But you shouldn't vilify the whole segment of people based on the small sample.
That's a logical way to think, though.
Yeah,
and
I'm a logical person.
yeah, but this society is not.
Sure. But
So
I think
tell people like with vaccines, that's a big thing.
that's a big thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm giving my kid. I have some family members actually.
Yeah.
I actually have some family members who we argue about vaccinations all the time.
I don't
And,
understand
like,
the argument.
They're you're pumping my kid full of mercury. Yo, somebody told me that you're pumping my kid full of aborted fetuses, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, dog? Like, and it's like they read these sites, and like there might be some kind of like I don't know, like it's wild.
Yeah.
It's a wild time to live.
Well, I think that's the other point I was going to make about how do we help, or how do you like, because you're going to need healthcare from people like at some point in your life, right?
Yeah.
And that's why like
See, I'm a pessimist, so like I'm gonna let you finish.
Yep.
But I'll look like at an ambulance. Every time I see an ambulance, I'm like, one day I'm gonna be riding in that motherfucker. One day.
well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah. They're gonna call that, or they're gonna call the meat wagon.
yeah.
And they're gonna pick me up one day. I can't help but thinking that shit. I just don't know where it comes from. It's not in my control.
It's pretty morbid.
It is morbid.
That.
So like I'll be playing with my kids or something like that, and I'll be having a great time, and all of a sudden the thought will pop in my head. I was like, damn, I'm gonna die one day. That sucks.
Yeah.
Like and it's fleeting.
real.
It's fleeting. It's definitely real.
It's real.
But it's fleeting. But it's just a weird like I can't help but.
Yeah, my partner has it like so she has the same. So she had cancer in the past, and so she like now that we have kids, it's like it's the same kind of thoughts about mortality are there, but they're heightened or the emotional response is heightened because it's like I don't want to leave this.
Yeah, like when I'm having a good time, I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
Like I'll think about it, I'll be like, it is what it is. But like I literally can enjoy and bask because like I always think outside of the box as far as like, we get so stuck in routine that you kind of forget. Well, first I always think like, yo, we have no idea what we're doing here. Like everybody's just kind of like, maybe I'll go this way today. That might work. And
But apparently they don't have that choice.
they don't have that choice. That's what I'm saying. So like nobody really knows what's going on. Everybody's just kind of trying to figure it out together.
Right.
And so when you kind of think of things in that context, like instead of like everybody has this goal and this mission, and you wake up and you go to work and you do this, and when you step outside of that paradigm, it becomes like this a whole bunch of little lost kids trying to find themselves and find each other.
Right.
It's really kind of. It's really kind of wild, and I try to look at the world in that context. Like nobody really knows what they're doing, and so I always step back and just like enjoy the little things because like there's things that I enjoy, and like you always should enjoy the shit that you enjoy. But go ahead, I was cut you off.
No, I think I think about goals and things that I want to achieve, and that's like I may not know how exactly I'm going about doing that, but I'm kind of like task or putting myself to the task of like I want to get closer to this kind of goal or objective, right? That's just how I think.
Yeah, no, and what I've really realized, man, is like that and I say this all the time, and you hear people say this all the time, but that there is no there, like you grind and you get to that goal, and then you're like, all right, what else? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and you really, and like one of my best friends who used to be on this podcast, it was co-hosted it with me, but he's just the epitome of what I want to be. He just kind of goes with the flow, he doesn't let anything bother him. He just never gets too up, never gets too down, and always just kind of just is what it is, man.
Yeah.
And I love the way he looks at life, and I love
Yeah.
the way he looks at things, because it's like you just never know, man. It's a
Right.
beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's a philosophy that I've been trying to get closer to. It's around like just learning more about stoicism and how that whole stoicism, yeah,
Stoicism or
stoicism.
stoicism?
I may have mispronounced that,
Right.
but it's basically
Is the root word stoic?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
it's the root word
Right.
of that. But it's this philosophy that kind of teaches you how to, or kind of like how the world is constructed in this way, and how you can learn to let go of the things that you are not in control of, and just live and be present, and kind of not let things affect you either positively or negatively. And
Right.
so it talks about a lot of the early practitioners of this philosophy, like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, and how they thought, right? And
Right.
it's super interesting because they both of them had achieved a lot in their time, but they also were learning to not let that achievement define them, or figure out like what is the next ladder or the next rung of the ladder to get to.
Right.
So it's a very like deep philosophy.
One of the things that I kind of got caught on was like the history of science. So like when you look at like the history of science, it's basically like an emergence of our human intellect collectively, and it's kind of what separates us from other primates, is like our ability to pass on knowledge. And so like the history of science has been our ability of like our best and brightest thinkers, and we keep passing it on, and we keep growing, and that shit is just the most beautiful thing in the world,
Yeah.
the most inspiring thing in the world to me, and I love it. Like, so I want to share this quote that my friend had. I didn't plan this. I texted to him last night. It's wild, actually. So he has this like we're I don't know if you know, but you can share notes with people on your iPhone.
Yeah.
So people that don't know, like, you can go into your notes and you can write a whole bunch of shit down, and you can have somebody in your notes with you on your phone. So it's like you're in this little communication, and we always go back and forth. And he has this long ass shit, and he said, think about everything you love and all the qualities. This turned into an inspirational podcast. It's hilarious. But it says, think about everything you love and all the qualities that remind you why. Then ask yourself, how often do I display these qualities? And I was like, oh, shit. That is directly for me, because I always talk shit about everybody else, and that's not what I like.
Right.
So I'm working my ass off to do that. Like that last year, I've been focused on trying to be the light that you want to be in the world, what you want to see.
Right.
It's hard to do though.
It's very hard.
As a pessimist,
It's very hard. Yeah.
it's like George Carlin said. He said if you scratch under a pessimist, there's an optimist.
Right.
And he said, but the pile of shit is just too big. That's what he said.
I mean, it's there though. I think it's there.
The pile of shit.
I think both are there. Both are present. But I think the optimism is there. Well, anyway, going back, I wanted to finish that thought about the healthcare system.
sorry about
because
that,
I think
man.
it is an important point that I think many people need to understand. Is that, and this is a larger point about healthcare in general. We tend to relinquish our own kind of thought process and like understanding and knowledge collection to just say to the doctor, this is on you now. You have to fix this for me. And you kind of give them that power. But what you really need is to become more educated about what it is you are going through. And that means understanding how your own body is performing or not performing, and understanding what is happening, or how is this going to be treated by this person. And so you can become a more informed patient and not just sit on the sidelines waiting for other people to fix the
That's
problem.
actually a great point, and I think I can relate to that fully. And I think what helped me along my professional career in the NFL was the fact that I was always cognizant and aware of my body. And what I noticed as I went through, not a lot of people are, and so I know if there's any kind of imbalance or I feel anything, I know exactly when and where and how to attack it. And so like I'm very aware of my body, and a lot of people are not.
Yeah, it's people. I think they're not literate in healthcare or their own body, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that is, we don't teach that. Like, you
Yeah.
never really learn unless you go to medical school. But even then, you're just learning about a bunch of facts and things about
I always
diagnosis.
wonder that, like when doctors go to doctors, how do they describe their symptoms?
I mean, they use the language that's been developed in the medical industry to like kind of shorthands for these things, right? So a lot of acronyms and whatnot. And then it can become like when you're sitting there listening to the doctor or a doctor talking to another doctor about your case, like you're like, they're speaking a whole nother language.
Yeah.
And they must be talking about something.
Yeah.
They must be like, they must know something that I don't. And therefore like, okay, they know more than I do. So I'm just going to trust that's they're going to take care of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's wrong. Like, I think you have to become an informed person about your own health, and especially the kinds of things that are going to be done to you, right?
You're asking a
If you
lot
don't
from
pay
people.
attention, well, that's kind of why our company exists.
Facts,
Is that
okay, I got
how
you.
can we help? How can we help elevate the kind of the literacy of the patient and guide them through things that might help avoid unnecessary harm?
Yeah, I mean, people are just not smart.
Yes. I would say you're asking a lot of people to become like super educated, but I think it also puts us to the task of, okay, how do we make this easier
Gotcha.
and accessible? How do we make it like, you know, when you picked up an iPhone, you know how to use it, right? You didn't go to class to learn how to use an iPhone,
Yeah.
right? It just worked,
Right.
and you just figured it out. I think that's where great technology can play a role. Is like, how do we just make it easy, right? And how do we like use the best of technology around us to make people more informed and educated about their own health and what's going to happen to them, and maybe try some other options that aren't so heavy-handed and extreme. So that's kind of it's almost like a never-ending goal, but like that's what's important.
Well, I think that there's a market for it because people are so uninformed and like to remain uninformed. So there's definitely a market for that shit for sure. Yeah. So I think it's.
I mean,
but it's necessary though. There's
a comfort in that laziness, but I think that when you're like, especially in like the musculoskeletal category that we're in, the fact is that you're in pain, right, every single day, and whether I tell you you're in pain or tell you you're not in pain, like you have that in your body, right? And I'm not creating the pain for you, but I might be able to give you, or PeerWell might be able to give you some options to help deal with it. But that's on you to do it. But at the end of the day, like it's a response that exists for you and you alone, and nobody can tell you differently, and nobody can really take it away from you. You have to do these things to make it go away.
No, that's beautiful. Like I said, it's definitely a market for it. It's definitely needed. That's one thing I think we were privy to in professional sports was that we were privy to the knowledge of our bodies, and we had professionals at our disposal after surgeries, after like any kind of injuries we had. We had trainers on staff, and so you go inside and you say, well, "What's wrong? Okay, you got to do this to get better." And I've picked up so much knowledge from over the years from being in those training rooms and being around those medical professionals that I was able to kind of develop and evolve my own sense of body awareness.
Sure.
And so I don't think the general public is. I know the general public isn't privy to that.
But even when you have access to some like really top quality healthcare, and they have an incentive to make sure you're healthy, like the team has a certain like a very large incentive, but it can still go wrong, right? Like think what happened with Kawhi Leonard, right? He was misdiagnosed by his team.
Oh, really?
By the Spurs.
Well, see, that's a whole nother conversation. That happens a lot, actually. Yeah. That happens a lot. Yeah. That's true. Yeah,
if you're not informed and you're not like aware of what's going on with your own body,
great point,
then you become victim to like other people's like thoughts and experiences and so on. But
and agendas.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into that, but like with Kawhi, with IT, like
I've seen a lot of guys.
He played through a lot of pain And look where that got them, right?
I've seen a lot of guys that they put back out on the field and they weren't ready to go. They knew they weren't ready to go.
Sure.
And I've seen doctors lie. You're right.
Yeah.
You're 100% right.
So
Great.
you
fucking
have to
point.
be your own advocate. And
You're right.
that's kind of what PureWell aims to become, is like that tool to allow you to be a really good advocate for yourself.
That'd be actually good for you guys to align yourselves, or at least get in the room with and see what can come of it with the NFLPA. So you can kind of, or just like any kind of union, sports organization, so that you guys could kind of vent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think
because you're allowed second opinions, but they kind of usher you towards.
Yeah.
Like they don't really, you're allowed a second opinion, but they don't like it.
right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because then when it delays like getting to the result that they want,
Like they're real firm on like you can get a second opinion, but like you can tell they don't really.
I think the bigger
they don't
tragedy
prefer it.
like is the retired players and just like
tell me
what
about
happens
it.
with them.
Yeah.
And so many of these players are kind of riddled with injuries.
Yeah, I'm fucked up.
Yeah, and mentally and physically, right? And
I don't know. So what are you trying to say, bro?
well, you know about like CTE and like all these things, right?
yeah.
You talk about it, but like even just emotionally, like your life, like you have your whole career done by early 30s, and you're still alive.
I
right?
got super lucky. I just got lucky that I'm interested in other things.
Yeah.
A lot of guys, you can see it, man. They're trying to hang around the sport. Like they just, all they want to do is football. I'm just like, no.
It's the only thing they've known, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an athlete like that, so I can't totally relate. So I don't want to speak for anybody else, but
Right. No,
I can understand, like, if it's the only thing you've ever known, it's comforting to you, and it's like goes back to your defense mechanisms, right? Like, I know this thing and it's safe, and I can operate
be
here, and I've
around
been
it.
successful here.
Yeah.
I've beat a lot of people to get to this level, so I must be good at this. Can I be good at anything else? It's like that's being vulnerable again. It's very
there's a
hard.
psychology to it too. Like guys break down emotionally and mentally. But a lot of my guys I play with, they're doing well. And so it's good to see. And so like I don't see it really firsthand with guys like I like some of my best guys that I've my friends. They're transitioning well.
It's good.
But you've seen it across the league. You hear stories and guys struggle, man. It's tough. But man, what a fruitful conversation. We're from arranged marriages to AI to healthcare to all kinds of shit, man. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. I appreciate you coming through.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
I just wanted to do awkward silences. No, man. If they want to find you or your company, where can they find you?
So PeerWell, you can find us online. Just Google for us. It's PeerWell, PeerWell. And if you are interested in anything that we do, any of the programs that we offer, you can email me personally, Manish@peerwell.co. And then I'm on Twitter. You can find me there, MN Shah. I'm actually trying to like downshift away from social media, so
Really?
I don't really participate. I'm not on. I don't post anything on Instagram. I have the accounts. I just don't use them anymore.
Right. No, I've been pretty active on them, and I started doing this research shit for Michael Jackson, and so like I haven't been able to be on, and it's kind of relieving actually.
It's kind of what?
Relieving.
To be on social media?
To be off.
Oh yeah.
So it's like like you always want to know, you want to be in the know, and not knowing is kind of a luxury.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm gonna try to transition, but it's tough because like a lot of what I do is on social media, so it's tough. I kind of have to be involved.
There's a lot of people in the tech community. They do like breaks, like they'll go off off of social media for 6 weeks and then come back just to take time away and kind of let your brain kind of release from
it's wild.
the anxiety and like the amping up that social media.
It's wild when you're retired, though, right? So I'm retired and like I do this podcast, I do music, and I just do things that I love to do.
Right.
But like I wake up and I check social media.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like my newspaper.
Which one do you go to first?
Twitter.
Okay.
I go to Twitter first. and then
I do the same.
yeah, because Instagram isn't in chronological order, and so like I'll see like a post from like 3 days ago, and I'm like, what the fuck? This is stupid. This is the dumbest shit in the world. Instagram needs to go back to that. Why did they do that? Go talk to your boys in Silicon Valley, man. That shit is dumb.
Yeah,
but anyway,
they got 1 billion plus users, so they're doing something right.
Stop. I remember, matter of fact, I remember they sent out an update that stopped from scrolling, and you had to tap, and it swiped, and people were outraged.
Right.
Like they was like, "Yo, we're off this shit," and they changed it that day.
Yeah,
she was hilarious.
yeah.
Dog.
I mean, when the mob speaks, somebody's got to listen.
100%. Out of their control.
Right.
I appreciate you coming through, man. Like I said, you can find him on Twitter, man. What was the ad again?
Oh, MN Shah.
MN Shah, SHAH.
Yeah.
Swag. All right, man. As you know, we end the podcast the same every time, man. So we're trying to get Jim Carrey on the podcast. We're almost done with the compilation video. It's taking a long time to put together, man. So we'd appreciate it if you add to it and try to get Jim Carrey on the podcast, man. Just look in the camera and holler at Jim for us.
Yeah, I was actually preparing for this before, because I'm a longtime listener of the podcast. So I was just like, of all the people that have reached out to or kind of did their shout out to Jim, like what would I say that's better or just different? So actually, in preparation, I was watching the Jim and Andy. I was rewatching some of that Jim and Andy documentary.
Okay.
And so it's interesting, like how he's just moved into this like post-celebrity life, and that's fascinating. It's like
super.
It's just a whole other era for him. So Jim, what I would say is, you kind of have many phases of your life, and I think you've transitioned into this whole other phase of life, and that's post-celebrity, and almost like he's like post-consciousness in some way. So Jim, I would say like, if you came onto this podcast, I think it'd be an interesting exploration of what that post-consciousness life is or could be. And I think Arian is somebody that also believes in a lot of those same things. But I think overall it'd just be a good conversation, because I think a lot of people are going to be moving on to new chapters as they live longer lives and just do different things. So I think it's worth an exploration of how people do that and how people learn to let go of what they were once good at.
That was by far the most thoughtful Jim Carrey advocation we've had.
Wow.
I appreciate it, man.
Oh, I hope he comes on.
I hope he does too. He better. Motherfucker. I appreciate you, man. Great conversation, man. Good luck with everything. We're linked, so
yeah,
I'll catch you, man.
Definitely.
Much love.